All right, well, welcome to this next video. This one is going to be the Democratic challenger Beto O'Rourke, the former congressman from down here in West Texas and El Paso, against Republican incumbent Donald Trump. Again, one more time, all 50 states, plus Washington, D.C. Let's start from west to east. Washington State, so far we've been giving it to the Democrats pretty much in every model that we've done. I don't see any reason that Beto O'Rourke would lose the state of Washington. Same in Oregon. I do think if there was a certain amount of controversy surrounding a Democrat, that Oregon could potentially be in play for the Republicans. They do manage to get representatives elected here regularly, and they're in the 40% range in most statewide races. But for now, unless polling data that comes out closer to the election suggests that Donald Trump has a real shot here, Oregon's going to go blue. Same with California. Nevada, as we've talked about in the first couple videos that we did, Nevada has seen a dramatic shift to the left. The majority of the state legislature, for the first time in history, is majority female, as well as both senators being female. Jackie Rosen, the Democrat, unseating Republican incumbent Dean Heller. Democrats also picked up the governorship here, Steve Sisolak winning that race, so that's going to go blue. Idaho, now we have mentioned how Democrats are beginning to see some positive signs in Idaho. Boise, down here in the southwestern portion of the state, is growing a lot, which really bodes well for the Democrats. They got a Democratic mayor elected, even though the mayoral elections in Boise are officially nonpartisan. But for now, Idaho's still going to go red in the general election. Same with Utah. And then Arizona, I do think that Beto O'Rourke has a pretty good chance in Arizona. Kirsten Sinema, of course, was a female and, managed to win in a state that is not particularly fond of electing minorities to statewide races. So Beto O'Rourke should have a chance in Arizona, but in a general election, I do think Trump could squeak this one out, potentially like 52-48, somewhere in that range, which is a good sign for Democrats, even though they would lose this state, because that would suggest that they have a real good chance or elsewhere in this country. In Montana, as we've outlined before, John Tester, Steve Bullock, if you can get a senator elected and reelected and also get the governorship in Montana, then you definitely have a presence there. But in general elections, Montana has a certain identity, and that's going to go red for Donald Trump. Wyoming, the most red state in the country. Wyoming, the most red state in the country. Colorado loves to go blue now in general elections. Hillary Clinton was not very popular. Beto O'Rourke is much more liked nationally. And Cory Gardner, the Republican senator, faces an extremely difficult reelection. I think you're going to see a lot of straight Democratic tickets in the state of Colorado. They also just elected Governor Jared Polis, who's even though he's replacing outgoing Democratic Governor John Hickenlooper, Polis is far more to the left than Hickenlooper was. So it suggests that Colorado continues to shift leftward. So I'm going to give that one to Beto O'Rourke. New Mexico, one of the most liberal states in the country, by far the most in this part of the country. You could argue even more so than California or Washington. Now in the Plain States, North Dakota, Democrats have a chance here, if they can sort of convince enough independent voters, because they did get enough independent voters to elect both Kent Conrad and Heidi Heitkamp to the Senate in North Dakota. But it did go for Trump by a pretty decent margin, and Heidi Heitkamp, well, she did capture 45% of the vote, which is a very respectable number, and Beto O'Rourke should not, be totally ignored in North Dakota. It should go red. South Dakota, same thing. Democrats got a senator elected there recently, and came close in the gubernatorial races here. But again, Beto O'Rourke is still kind of a new candidate, and even though that would certainly help in certain areas of the country like this, South Dakota has a reputation for voting for more establishment candidates on either the left or the right. So I'm going to give that one to Donald Trump. Nebraska, Nebraska is really seeing a big shift to the right. However, in the Omaha and Lincoln area, I think this is one of those scenarios where this could be one of those split decisions, where Beto O'Rourke is able to come up with one of the, or I guess it would be, yes, one of those districts, that being Nebraska's second district, to kind of split the margin there in Nebraska. Donald Trump taking 4 out of the 5 electoral votes. Beto O'Rourke still, maintaining a nice 60-vote lead here, 96-36. Kansas, Laura Kelly is the new governor, but perhaps that's a nice shift going to the left for Democrats. However, in a general election, Jerry Moran and Pat Roberts are still pretty popular senators, and I think even though Chris Kobach, who did lose the gubernatorial race, is pretty similar to Donald Trump, Kansas, similarly to South Dakota, has a reputation for voting a certain way for establishment candidates in presidential elections. So Kansas is going to go red. Oklahoma, nothing to discuss. Now here's the big one right here: Texas. This is, of course, Beto O'Rourke's state. He was the congressman, three-term congressman out here from El Paso. Won re-election 2 different times, ran for the Senate, and narrowly lost to incumbent Ted Cruz, but did by far the best that almost any Democrat in recent memory has done in the state of Texas. Lupe Valdez, the Democratic nominee in Texas, did not do nearly as well. Hillary Clinton did not do as well. The final tally was about 52 to 48. Beto O'Rourke did exceptionally well in Dallas. San Antonio, Austin, Houston. He obviously carried, Harris County and the surrounding counties, but by not by a big enough margin to really push him over the top. Of course, he easily carried El Paso and then many of the border counties down here. So the rural areas of Texas was what pushed Ted Cruz over the top. However, Donald Trump is very unpopular in the state of Texas, as is the other senator from Texas who's also up for re-election in 2020, that being John Cornyn. So similar to what I described in Colorado, I think you're going to see a lot of straight blue tickets in the state of Texas. And because of that, and the fact that I think there are a lot of independent voters in Texas, particularly in some of the suburban areas of Dallas and of Houston, that may go to the left. Typically in an election year, the incumbent will lose some of the independent voters, and Beto O'Rourke does not need many votes to push himself over the top. And so for that, I'm actually going to go blue for Beto O'Rourke, and that's going to be a massive 38 votes that he's picking up. The second largest state in the country is going for Beto O'Rourke in this race. He's now up by a big margin, 134 to 49. And with that loss of Texas, there's virtually no way that Donald Trump can win this election now. However, let's keep on going. Minnesota, very blue state now. Democrats had some unnerving signs after the 2016 election, considering Hillary Clinton only barely won the state of Minnesota. However, Amy Klobuchar and Tina Smith both won their elections very easily. They also got Tim Walz, governor, elected there. So Minnesota goes blue. Iowa. Democrats have 3 of the 4 House seats, and Steve King up here in the northwestern part of the state is extremely unpopular and almost lost his reelection. However, they did manage to get Kim Reynolds, the Republican, elected governor in the state of Iowa. So for now, I'm still going to give Iowa to the Republicans, but this is a big state to watch out for. Of course, Obama did win Iowa. Democrats have had some success in Iowa in the past, but right now Charles Grassley still holds a pretty good presence there. I'm going to give 6 votes to Donald Trump. Missouri, Claire McCaskill, of course, recently was the senator from there. Democrats did lose that seat in 2018, excuse me. St. Louis, as we've mentioned before, is quietly becoming one of the most liberal areas in the entire United States. But for now, in a general election, that's still going to go red. Arkansas, a very red state. Now, Louisiana, John Bel Edwards, the Democratic governor, and Mary Landrieu, recently a Democratic senator from there, is going to force Republicans to, at the bare minimum, pay attention here to Louisiana. Bill Cassidy is also up for re-election, but right now there's just too much in between the areas of Shreveport and Baton Rouge and New Orleans to really make this too much of a contested state. Louisiana will go red, although Democrats will probably get closer here than people think. Mississippi, not much to discuss here. Alabama, same thing. Tennessee has seen a big shift to the right. Bill Lee, the governor, just was elected there. Marsha Blackburn, who's very aligned with Trump on many issues, was just elected there. So Tennessee's going to go red. Kentucky, Democrats have talked about Kentucky for a long time as a potential pipe dream. Mitch McConnell is very unpopular there, but Lexington and Louisville are still really the only areas of the state that they can rely on to go blue. So I would bet that, again, for a president who's very unpopular, I would bet that Democrats can get themselves into the 40s in Kentucky, particularly because you would expect a lot of independents to vote against Mitch McConnell and potentially on a straight ticket in 2020. but that's probably still not quite going to be enough. They're going to need enough of a shift from the right-wing base in Kentucky. So I'm still going to go red for Kentucky. Illinois has become a thoroughly blue state. Republicans got Mark Kirk, the senator, elected there, and then up until J.B. Pritzker won the governor's mansion there in 2018 in the midterms. They had the governorship there as well. Illinois was one of the 7 states that Democrats flipped from Republican to Democrat in the gubernatorial race. So for that, Chicago, Peoria, Springfield, Illinois should go blue. Now, Wisconsin, of course, this was one of the big states for Donald Trump that he won. You could say Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania were really the 3 states that put him over the top. So in Wisconsin, Democrats had a lot of encouraging signs. Tammy Baldwin won re-election pretty easily, the senator from Wisconsin. They had a very disappointing election when Ron Johnson, the Republican, defeated Russ Feingold in 2016, which was an extremely disappointing defeat for the Democrats in the Senate. But they managed to hang on to Tammy Baldwin's seat, and further helping themselves, they got Tony Evers, the Democrat, elected governor from Wisconsin. He unseated incumbent Scott Walker. So Wisconsin is very much in play for the Democrats, but again, without much polling data, to me, Wisconsin is actually going to stay with Donald Trump right now, because Green Bay, right up in here, has been growing a lot in recent years, and that bodes very well for the Republicans in the short term. It helps Democrats in the long term as more college-educated voters move there, but in the short term, as Green Bay becomes a little bit more populated, that is going to help Donald Trump in this election. And right now, Milwaukee and Madison down here in the South are really the only areas where Democrats have too much of a stranglehold on the voting populace there. So I'm still going to give Wisconsin. This will be very close, and I would not be surprised to see Beto O'Rourke win should he be the nominee. But for now, I'm going to give 10 votes to Donald Trump in Wisconsin. So it's now 164 to 123. Again, you need 270 to win. Now in Indiana, back here south, Mike Pence really makes all the difference down here in Indiana. Obama, of course, did win at one time, and they had Joe Donnelly, the Democratic senator, elected there, but he just lost his re-election to Mike Braun. And again, Mike Pence makes too much of a difference here in a general election. So I'm going to give Indiana and its 11 electoral votes to Donald Trump. Now for Michigan. This was potentially the biggest surprise of the 2016 election. Of these 3 Midwestern states, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, Michigan is probably the most left-leaning. Democrats had a very good year in the midterms there. They got Debbie Stabenow, the senator there, reelected, so they still have both senators there, her and Gary Peters, and they got the governorship back there, Gretchen Whitmer winning the governor's mansion. So Wisconsin, Michigan, Illinois, New Mexico, Kansas, and Illinois. Or maybe I said Illinois twice, but regardless, there were 7 states that the Democrats flipped in the midterms from Republican to Democrat in the gubernatorial races. And Michigan was one of them. And again, out of all of them, turnout in Detroit in 2016 was very low. Out of those states, Michigan is the furthest left-leaning. So I'm going to give this one to Beto O'Rourke. I think that's a pickup for the Democrats in 16 electoral votes. And between that and the 38 down here from Texas, the path to victory is getting so much more difficult for Donald Trump. Beto O'Rourke's already within 100 votes. So, but there's still plenty more states to go here. Let's go down to Florida, down south, 29 electoral votes down here. Trump, it was somewhat of a surprise that he won down here. Obama, of course, won the state of Florida both times, but Republicans got some outstanding news in Florida in the midterms. They ousted longtime Democratic Senator Bill Nelson, who was defeated by Rick Scott, who, of course, was the former governor of Florida, and replacing Rick Scott for governor was Ron DeSantis, who's even further to the right than Rick Scott, who's known down here in the Florida area as a Trump stormtrooper, is what they've been calling him. So to me, Florida is going to go red. That should still be a pretty close state. The margin on election night will still probably be pretty close. So that's a big retention. But Florida, Iowa, and Wisconsin are big retentions for Donald Trump. But losing Texas is still possibly a death sentence here. And of course, he's already lost Michigan as well. Now in Georgia, Democrats are also looking, to Georgia as a potential flip in the near future, considering they got a black woman nearly elected to the governor's mansion. Stacey Abrams lost a very, very close race against Brian Kemp. But for now, in a general election, I think Georgia still has itself an identity, even as Atlanta continues to get bigger and bigger. So that's another 16 for Trump. He's now within one vote, 180 to 179. South Carolina, Democrats had a good run at it in the gubernatorial race. Henry McMaster was, forced to sweat it quite a bit for the governorship there. And of course, the House Majority Whip, Jim Clyburn, is from over here on the coastal area of Charleston. But for now, again, there's a certain identity of South Carolina. That's going to go red. Donald Trump has the lead again, 188 to 180. But the path to re-election is still very, very difficult as we get further up here into the northeast portion of the country. Now in North Carolina, Democrats probably can still identify North Carolina as a purple state. Obama did win it in 2008. And of course, Roy Cooper, the Democrat, is elected there. And of course, Kay Hagan and John Edwards are both, have both been elected to the Senate from North Carolina. But Hillary Clinton did come close there. But I think North Carolina we've seen a little bit of a shift to the right in recent years. There have been some people who have trickled up there from northern parts of Southern California, of South Carolina, and of rural parts of Virginia. That's going to be a little too much for the Democrats to overcome. North Carolina will probably be similar to Florida in that it will be close, but other than the Charlotte area, there's not too much for Democrats to rely on. So I'm going to give North Carolina to Donald Trump. He's the first over 200 votes. Now in Virginia, so Democrats are going to have a tough time in Virginia this time around because already the margins are pretty close in Virginia, and the Ralph Northam situation, as well as the lieutenant governor situation there in Virginia, have made things very difficult in the 2020 election for Democrats. However, I do think in a general election there will be too many urban voters throughout the state that will just barely push Virginia over the top for Beto O'Rourke. I would expect this to be close on election night and a little too close for comfort for Democrats. But again, even if they were to lose Virginia, they have states that they can burn, considering what they did down here in Texas, winning an unexpected 38 electoral votes. West Virginia was one of the most lopsided states of the entire race in 2016. I don't expect Trump to win it by quite the same margin. And of course, Joe Manchin, who's a very, very moderate Democrat, he also won re-election there in the state of West Virginia. But I'm still going to give that to Donald Trump. That's another 5 for him. So it's now 208 to 193. Ohio. Ohio is still kind of tentatively purple. Mike DeWine won the governorship there in Ohio. In Cincinnati, it does vote blue as an urban area, but it just doesn't vote blue by enough of a margin to really give it to the Democrats in a general election. Of course, Sherrod Brown was able to win re-election, so Democrats are still going to have a good chance here in Ohio. And of course, Obama won it both times. But for now, given what we saw in the midterms, the gubernatorial race going to the Republicans and Sherrod Brown winning what was a very close election, that's still going to be another 8 for Donald Trump. That's another big retention for him. But again, he's still got a lot to overcome because of Texas down here. Now in Maryland. Maryland's a very blue state. Of course, they do have a Republican governor, but a very moderate Republican governor. Baltimore is one of the most liberal cities in the entire country. New York City, Baltimore, Philadelphia, San Francisco, Dallas, are probably amongst the most liberal areas of the entire country. You could maybe throw Denver in there as well, just given the data that we've seen. So Maryland is definitely going to go blue in the general election, as will Delaware. Nothing much to really discuss there. It's another quick 3 for Beto O'Rourke. Now, this is a big one here in Pennsylvania. This was 20 votes, and when this one came down on election night, that was pretty much it. That was the final nail in the coffin for Hillary Clinton. Democrats also had some encouraging signs in Pennsylvania in the midterms. They got they're one of the 2 senators there, the other being Republican Pat Toomey. They got Bob Casey reelected, the Democrat, to the Senate, and they also got Tom Wolf, the Democratic governor, reelected. So those were good signs. I do think turnout in Philadelphia is going to be a little bit higher, and for that reason, I'm going to give this to Beto O'Rourke, and that's a huge 20 votes for him because Donald Trump essentially had to take Pennsylvania, considering that's really the last kind of swingy state of any kind that he can use to try to make up what he lost down here in Texas and what he lost in Michigan. So that, even though we're tied, that's a really, really big blow to Donald Trump. But let's keep on going. New Jersey should go blue in the general election, even though Chris Christie, we've seen some signs that Republicans have a chance there, but Philip Murphy unseated him, or rather replaced him, so we'll give New Jersey to Beto O'Rourke. That's another 14 for him. He's with 30 votes. And here's 29 of them right there in New York. Of course, New York City and the surrounding boroughs is an extremely liberal area of the country, and then further cementing this state for the Democrats. Albany, Syracuse, Buffalo, Rochester, just too much for the Republicans to overcome in a general election. And now Beto O'Rourke needs a single vote to unseat Donald Trump, and he is going to get that right here in Connecticut. Republicans came close in the gubernatorial race in Connecticut, but Ned Lamont, the Democrat, ultimately won it. Rhode Island, very blue, nothing to discuss there. Massachusetts, same thing. Boston, a very big liberal stronghold as a college town. That's also going to go blue. Vermont, liberal stronghold. New Hampshire. Now, I have been, in the Tulsi Gabbard video that we did, I actually gave New Hampshire to Donald Trump because for this part of the country, New Hampshire is extremely conservative. They had a senator there up until recently, Maggie Hassan, Jeanne Shaheen, the two senators there now. Of course, they also have a Republican governor currently in New Hampshire, as does Vermont, by the way, and Massachusetts. But for now, I'm actually going to give this one to New Hampshire. Beto O'Rourke is a rising star within the party, or New Hampshire, rather, is going to be given to the Democrats. In Maine, Democrats got the governorship up here as well. I think because Beto O'Rourke is still fairly unproven in nationwide races, I'm still going to have a scenario here where I make this a split scenario where I give one of the votes to Donald Trump, or two of them rather. So there's that's going to be the final tally across the states, and then D.C. of course will go blue, and then out here Alaska, before we forget, pretty reliably Republican state. The two senators and Mike Dunleavy, pretty popular out there. Hawaii will vote for just about any Democrat. So that is our final tally because of this right here, Texas, the 38 votes. And what's interesting, if you give Texas to Donald Trump, which is going to be very close, Beto O'Rourke needs a single vote still to win it. And we have a tie scenario if you give Texas back to Donald Trump, which again, in this model, I don't think is necessarily going to happen. But for the sake of argument, let's just go through and see if there's one more vote that either of these candidates can pick up. Now, logically, the first one you would think of is, can Donald Trump get this one here in Nebraska? That sort of split ticket scenario. And if you do that, and you give this to Donald Trump, and there he has it. If you give this to all of it to Beto O'Rourke, however, we're tied again. So then it pretty much comes down to Wisconsin and Florida. Now, Donald Trump has himself, I think, an easier time to retain Florida than he does in Wisconsin. If anything, I think Wisconsin is much more likely to go blue than red than Florida is. However, Florida could also very well go blue. But again, I'm not going to change what I came up with. I'm going to give Texas to Beto O'Rourke. And Nebraska, I think we're going to have a split vote there, and same in Maine. So there we go. So I think the final tally is going to be 307 to 231, Beto O'Rourke defeating Donald Trump. Thanks for watching.